Whenever you're learning a foreign language, it's easy to get stuck somewhere around intermediate without really knowing what you need to do to push yourself forward. It's like just being a ship adrift in space. You're not really sure where you need to go from that point. Well, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you a drill that I recommend to not only help you practice your Spanish, but also to identify those gaps in your Spanish so you know which way to go. You know which way to point this spaceship. I call it the why drill, and not like why the letters, but rather like por qué. It works like this. You come up with a basic sentence about someone doing something. It could even be you doing something. For example, today I got up at 5 a.m. Very basic, right? After that, you make it more difficult by asking a simple question. Why? ¿Por qué? And then adding that reason to the original sentence. For example, you come up with something like, today I got up at 5 a.m. to get to the office before my boss arrived at 8. So see, we went from basic to more of an intermediate level just by asking why. So how do we get to advanced from here? Well, we ask the why question again. Why did you want to get there before the boss arrived? Now this won't be in the same sentence because, well, that would just be a long run-on sentence. It'll be in the second sentence. And let's say we come up with something like, I had to arrive early so my boss wouldn't know that yesterday I forgot to finish an important project. Now see, that became advanced really quickly, right? Well, you can use this drill to create your own sentences and practice. But for folks who don't want to go to that trouble or don't know how to analyze those sentences to figure out what their gaps are, let's go ahead and go through the sentences I just covered, and then I can show you basically how this works, all right? Go ahead and translate this one, and this is the beginner sentence. Today I got up at 5 a.m. And I'm saying I got up, I didn't wake up, all right? That's an important distinction. Ready? Hoy me levanté a las 5 de la mañana. And some folks might have said a las 5 de la madrugada because they're just saying like 5 o'clock is so early in the morning. But really what I'm looking for here is de la mañana. How about our intermediate sentence? Today I got up at 5 a.m. to get to the office before my boss arrived at 8. One little tip here, we're showing purpose, right? That's the purpose for waking up. That might help some people. Go ahead. This one's a little longer, isn't it? I'm such a coffee addict. Hoy me levanté a las 5 de la mañana para llegar a la oficina antes de que llegara mi jefe a las 8. If you're studying Peninsular or Spain Spanish, you may have stuck that in the present perfect. Hoy me he levantado, and that's fine for that area. In Latin America, we're going to be using the preterite for this. So you see how this drill can push your Spanish? That definitely got more complex really quickly. In fact, the imperfect subjunctive even makes an appearance there, and that is definitely not a conjugation that beginners get into. Let's take this to the advanced level. We ask why again. We get a second sentence. I had to arrive early so my boss wouldn't know that yesterday I forgot to finish an important project. That's definitely more advanced. There is a lot going on in that sentence. So you can work on that. Some of you folks that are really taking the time to write this out or making an effort, might want to pause this. Now, if you're a complete beginner, you're not getting any of this anyway, but you're sticking in there because, and do that, because I'm going to be explaining these constructions, all right? So just stick around for that. More coffee. Did you come up with something like this? Tuve que llegar temprano para que mi jefe no supiera que ayer me olvidé de terminar un proyecto importante. Did you get something like that? I'm a big fan of this drill. Personally, I think it's a great way to identify gaps in your Spanish because if you can't say something, you need to work on that area. But the problem is knowing exactly what that area is can be difficult. Sometimes you need a guide to help you. So I'll be your guide, all right? Let's go ahead and break down those sentences. I'm going to go ahead and skip over the basic sentence because it's already part of the intermediate one. So let's take a look at that. It's right there on the screen. It starts out with hoy, today. In Spanish, you can put that today in different parts of the sentence. Sometimes it'll appear right before the verb like it does here. It can even appear all the way at the front of the sentence, which coincidentally it also does here. After the verb, sometimes at the end, you can move it around. So you have hoy Another option here would have been el día de hoy, today. Our next thing is we have me levanté, which comes from the verb levantarse, which means to get up, which is different than to wake up, despertarse. So this is the actual getting up part, all right? This is in the preterite because it is an event that occurred in the past that is completed in the past. A las 5 de la mañana, at 5 o'clock in the morning. As I mentioned, maybe you could say a las 5 de la madrugada. Madrugada means the early morning. And if somebody thinks that's really early, they might want to stress a las 5 de la madrugada. Like it was at 5 in like the early morning. Personally, I'm up by 4:35 every day anyway. I'm just like a las 5 de la mañana. That's not particularly early for me. If I get up at 3, yes, then I'm like a las 3 de la madrugada. Next we have llegar, to arrive, a la oficina, to the office. Now you're going to see llegar used with the preposition a lot when you're arriving to a place. So on your word list, I recommend you put llegar a to arrive to somewhere. Okay, that will help you a lot in remembering that preposition. Anytime you have a verb and you have a preposition that's often attached to it, I recommend putting it that way on your word list, flashcard list, whatever you're using to go back and study from. Our next part of the sentence is antes de que llegara. And I'm going to keep that together because that might have caught some people's eye and they're like, okay, antes de que means before. I'm confused why llegara. Obviously, llegara comes from llegar, to arrive. And this is going to be in the imperfect subjunctive. If you don't know what the subjunctive is, you're missing out. I really think it's the keystone to mastering Spanish. I have a playlist called Subjunctive Triggers. So if you go to my channel on YouTube and you go to playlists, you'll see all kinds of playlists. You'll see the Cero de Conversational, which is for the absolute beginner. It will give you some great basics in the language really quickly. You'll actually be able to make sentences in the first lesson, I promise you. And people always go, no, I won't. And then they're like, yeah, I could. So check that out. You'll also see Subjunctive Triggers playlist. And as I do videos that talk about the subjunctive, I'm adding it to that playlist. And it's in a very logical order, so follow the playlist, binge watch it, play it as you sleep, whatever you want to do, it'll really help you. One of the most important things you're going to learn as you work through that playlist is that there are certain grammatical constructions in Spanish that are going to trigger the subjunctive. And when I say the subjunctive, I'm just basically talking about a different set of conjugations for the verb. If you think of it that way, I think it makes it easier. So antes de que, before, always, always, always triggers the subjunctive. And I tell you that because I think that's a much easier way to learn Spanish, is to learn little phrases and little constructions and what triggers things. That way, you can speak grammatically correct Spanish long before you've developed an ear for the language. Developing an ear for a language takes years and hundreds, if not thousands of hours of exposure. But if you're already speaking to people correctly and they're responding, you're in the language. You're more likely to reach that level a lot faster. All right? Back to the sentence, we have antes de que llegara mi jefe a las 8. Not too tough, right? Well, I say that. It really depends on your level. Don't get discouraged if some of those things were tough. We identified what you should probably study. If it's the preterite or the subjunctive. If it's the subjunctive, what are you going to do? Jump on that Subjunctive Triggers playlist like today. Let's go ahead and break down that advanced sentence. There is a lot going on in there, and I'm sure there's a lot of questions people have. Let's start right with those 3 words up front. Tuve que llegar. I had to arrive. This is using one of my favorite constructions in Spanish, tener que plus infinitive, to have to do something. And when you use that, the infinitive is the unconjugated verb. You just plug it in. Here we plugged in llegar, to arrive. I conjugated tener into the preterite tuve. And some folks may be like, why did you choose the preterite there? The preterite is used for actions occurring in the past that have a clear ending. Why didn't you choose tenía, which would be the imperfect, to show you had to do something, it's in progress in the past, we're not sure if you did it or not. And that's the distinction here. I'm telling a story here, right? I'm talking about something I did earlier during the day. Apparently I'm telling somebody else what I did. And in this case, when I said tuve que llegar, I had to arrive. It means that that's a completed action. That means that I successfully arrived, right? I had to do it and I did. If I said tenía in the imperfect, it's not clear if I managed to do it. I got up at 5 in the morning so I could get there before 8 because I had to arrive, early. Well, did you? We're not sure because you used tenía. A lot of students have trouble trying to determine whether to use the preterite or the imperfect, so I plan on doing a video on that. It's actually on my short list. If I can find my short list of topics, it's here somewhere. My desk is kind of a mess. Sorry about that. Let's get back to this. Tuve que llegar temprano. I had to arrive early. Para que mi jefe no supiera. I mentioned this before that para is our go-to word when we want to express purpose. Think of it as in order to, right? That helps out a lot. Here we have para que and not just para. And then after it we have mi jefe, my boss, no supiera. There's a lot going on there. So I'm going to actually go backwards. We have supiera. And some folks may not have recognized that. That is going to be the imperfect subjunctive. Yes. See how important the subjunctive is? That is the imperfect subjunctive of the verb saber, to know. In Spanish, the subjunctive doesn't just show up for no reason. It is triggered by something. That's why my playlist is called Subjunctive Triggers, see? So what's our trigger here? Well, let's back up and see. And we're going to go past. It's not no, it's not jefe, it's not me. Que? A lot of times the subjunctive is going to come after que. That's a little indication it may make an appearance, not always. And then before that we have para. That is our clause. Para que. Para que triggers the subjunctive. The question then becomes, why is it para que and not just para? And the reason is because we have two clauses with different subjects. So we have to have para que. We can't just have para. The first clause is, tuve que llegar temprano. I had to arrive early. Who's the subject? I am. Why do I have to arrive early? Para que, right? That's where that pops in. Mi jefe no supiera. My boss wouldn't know. That's the next part. Think of that as a mini clause. Who is the subject of that? My boss. Two clauses, different subjects, expressing our purpose, para que. We're going to have to use the subjunctive every single time. Isn't that easier, just learning that simple rule, than trying to somehow intuitively listen to hundreds or thousands of hours of the language and start to figure out, hey, wait a minute, I'm hearing supiera there. And try to make these connections on your own? I think it is. I don't know. I think it's easier to learn this way as an adult learner, but well, hey, you be you. Let's go on from there. We have mi jefe no supiera que ayer. My boss wouldn't know that yesterday. A lot of times, que by itself, we can translate it as that. From English, we see our that. We want to plug que in. Next thing we have in there is me olvidé. I forgot. And this comes from olvidarse, to forget. Now, there's lots of different ways to say to forget. That's the pronominal form, meaning it's ending in se. You could use the non-pronominal form, olvidar, plus the infinitive. Olvidé terminar un proyecto importante. But usually when it's accidental, you're going to take it to another level and use the pronominal, olvidarse de. And it's always going to appear with that de before the infinitive. So that's how we're going to write it, right? On our word list, flashcards, whatever we're doing, olvidarse de plus infinitive if you need to add that, to forget to do something. And that's like, oh, accidental. Olvidar by itself can mean accidental, but it can also mean like on purpose or intentionally. For example, somebody does something and you're like, forget it, olvídalo, olvídalo. Or your friend just broke up with his girlfriend, he's so upset, and you're like, tienes que olvidarla. You have to forget her, like mean intentionally, just get through that. What did we forget to finish? Un proyecto importante, an important project. Never a good thing, right? If you would like a breakdown of this drill in a PDF format so you can study it, that's available for members of the Qroo Spanish crew. That's a subscription that gives you access to bonus videos, worksheets, articles, and I'm constantly adding new material. There's a link to it in the description section of this video. It's also pasted to the top of the comments section, and it appears on the screen. If you like the format of this video, meaning you like the YY drills, and you would like to see more of these, all you have to do is hit the thumbs up icon. I see a lot of thumbs up, and I'm going to make more of these. Well, thanks for watching the channel, and until next time, hasta luego. And if you thought that was dragged out too much, well, I explained that in my last video. It's kind of my tagline now.